I'm Chad from Chad DIY. In today's video, we are talking about laser and cutting jigs. Now behind me, I have my three xTool laser cutter and engraver machines. And one of the big issues I've always had is trying to engrave small items. Now each one of these machines does have kind of a different surface layout. So the S1 has a honeycomb, the F1 has kind of one of those guys, or just the flat metal, and the P2 has just the bars going across. Now, an issue with all these machines that I run into with the smaller items, such as a business card, a dog tag, is how do you keep that dog tag or whatever perfectly straight while you're engraving, and also the repeatability. How do you, if you want to flip it on the other side, how do you make sure that image is matching what you've done on one side compared to the other? So that is where these jigs come in. I've been working on these jigs for quite a while. These are 3D printed. I 3D print these myself, designed them in Fusion 360. And there was a lot of kind of fine tuning, trying to get everything just to fit just right. This one, the smaller one, is specifically designed for the F1, fits in there perfectly. And this one could probably be used for, almost any laser cutter, but kind of designed for the S1 and the P2. Now with all that being said, let's jump into using these jigs. I'll show you how they work and also where you can get some for yourself. So let's get started. All right, we're at the S1 machine here. Now the S1 comes with the honeycomb feature, which a lot of laser cutters have that honeycomb, a lot of the open frames and stuff. That's pretty standard setup for where you're placing material. So let's go ahead and we'll kind of square this thing up. I'll show you a few options of how to get this thing squared, and then we'll do a test run on a business card. So let's get started with that. All right, here we are with the S1 with the honeycomb. First thing I'm gonna do is just kind of push the honeycomb to one side. This way you're gonna have a nice square edge, so you know it's not just kind of floating in the center where it could be out of whack there. So now that we have that pushed up against the side, here is my jig. So a few different options with these jigs is, this might be kind of hard to see with the angle here, but you can push the jig all the way flat to the edge of the honeycomb. And so then you should have a nice square edge here. The black, it might be a little hard to see on that, but another option is I have added these holes in here. So another option, if you want, if you have some of these are kind of, I don't know, comes off the cars or attaching bumpers or that kind of stuff. I don't know the correct name for these, but these are kind of low plugs. A lot of honeycombs will come with these plugs too. But that way, if you want to kind of keep it in the center, you can use a few of those plugs, kind of pop them in. You're gonna have to avoid the bar there. So kind of get one in there and one in there. And that way you kind of have a nice secure setup there for keeping it in place without worrying about having to hit it or anything. But you can, like I said originally, if you don't have these plugs, you can kind of just square it up with the bottom and the side. So now that we have our jig where we want it, I have the sample business card. Now there are some different sizes of these business cards. I'll provide the link of all the materials that I use and how I designed the jig around it. So these are pretty standard. I try to use the most common sizes for all these different options, but there are a little bit of variances. So if you have some different ones, it might not line up. So just want to double check that with the jig. But so there's actually two, I have the option of doing two business cards at one time. So there's a bottom, or there's a top and a bottom for that. But this is where this jig is really handy, because let's pop this out. Let's say you don't have a jig. You're trying to square up this business card. Now you can kind of go line it up with the honeycomb pattern there. But say you get it all lined up, you do one side. Now the really tough part is if you want to do both sides, you're flipping it around and trying to get that exactly where you want it again. So that's where this jig, let's put that jig back in place again. That's where you're really going to benefit from that. So you can line it up, flip it over when you do your engraving, and it should be perfectly aligned on both sides. So let's do a test engraving on this card and see how it goes. So we have the business card all loaded up. The first thing I'm going to do is we'll take a measurement of the distance of how high that sticks up. So we're just going to do the distance measurement there. And so now the machine will know the thickness there, measure that out. And then I'm going to do the 2-point positioning system. So we can see the laser lined up there. We're going to do just in the corner. We're going to do 2 corners so we get our square there. So we got the first one. I'm going to start my marking. Just hit the, let's do a rectangle. Point 1. Hit the button on the front of the machine. Move it over to the bottom there. Make our second point. All right, now we got a square and marking done. All right, so now we know exactly where the jig is set up in that business card. And so let's do, I think I got an image of, an owl here. There it is. So let's just kind of engrave that on the front of the card. Make it a little smaller here. We'll kind of just line that up here. Okay. All right, we'll check our settings. Let's go about, I think about 15,400. We'll try that. Do our 400. Process it. All right, I'm going to shut the lid and we'll engrave it. All right, let's see how it turned out there. Really nice. You can see, so now what's great about this is if we want to do the other side, exactly how that one is, we just plop it back in place and we just hit go again and we'll see how that works. All right, let's take a look at it here. One side, other side, just where I wanted it. So I'm really pleased how that worked on the S1. Now we're going to hop over to the P2. We'll try maybe a dog tag. So I have the business card, dog tag, and then there's a spot for a dog bone as well as a lot of other features in here, but we'll try a dog tag over on that P2 next. All right, so we got a jig here. The P2 is a little hard to just get that locked in place. What I do is just raise one of these bars up here a little bit, and then just kind of slide it against there. So you really only have to worry about the movement going back and forth. But as long as kind of careful, just kind of hold in place when we're removing the items, I think it should be fine. So let's pop in a dog tag and try that out. All right, so we got our little dog tag done. That worked out really well. And especially on this P2, not having a flat surface just with those bars, trying to engrave stuff, a jig like this is almost necessary if you want to do some of those smaller engravings. And really haven't highlighted what else this can do. I have enough for 10 pencils you can do. We have the dog bone shape. Well, maybe we'll do the dog bone on the F1. I also have circles for 25, 30, 35, and 40 millimeters, as well as some bottle opener slots. So we'll kind of maybe jump into the F1. We'll show that smaller jig that basically has everything that this has. It only has one of each item that you can do, but also has the slot for doing a Slate Coaster as well. So let's jump on the F1 and we'll kind of finish out the video and highlight that jig. All right, here we are over at the F1 now. So what's really cool about the F1, it's kind of got this removable little metal plate here. So it works perfectly for jigs. So this jig right now, it just pops right into place. So there's not kind of any messing around like with the S1 or the P2. So What I have set up here, you can do pencils, you can do that business card dog tag, got the same circles. It also has a spot for grab a little slate coaster here, put in that slate coaster. Now, once again, I will provide links to the materials I'm using because I do have some other slate coasters, the square ones that are bigger, so they don't fit in the jig. So there are some different measurements for different products, but I'll link the products I use to make sure you know that the jig will work. So let's get this jig set up. We'll do that little dog bone there. We'll try both sides, see how even it turns out, and we'll go from there. All right, so we'll put our little dog bone in there. It is in focus. We'll frame it up there. That looks really good. All right, we're going to process it here and we'll start it up. And that F1 is lightning fast there. Yeah, it's a little hard to see in the lighting, but all right, we'll flip around and do the other side here. There you go. Tulip. Looks good. All right, the last thing we're going to try out is doing a pencil. Now, that was kind of the toughest part about designing this jig is, so we have these, I don't know if there's hexagon or whatever shape they are, and you kind of want to engrave the flat surface. So I tried to design this jig where you could put it in, you could kind of turn it, and then it holds it in place where you can align that flat surface. So we'll kind of line up one of these pencils and we'll see how well it does, hold it in place and see what kind of engraving we can get. All right, I'm first gonna line it up kind of sideways here so I can get the focus in place. Good. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, and now we can kind of square it up here and go over the software and get that all lined up. All right, so there's some examples of what these jigs can do. Hopefully that kind of gave you an idea of maybe why you need a jig. Maybe you didn't think you did before, but how handy they really are, especially for doing double size and keeping those alignments perfect. You're gonna want a jig. Now, if you're interested in these jigs, I will provide my Etsy link for both of these. I have my Etsy store where I have 3D printed products and digital plans, so you can pick some of these up for yourself there. Now also, if you're in the market for a laser cutter, I have my xTools behind me. I'll provide my xTool links as well. It really helps out if you are buying one of these amazing laser cutters. If you use those links, you'll get the best price on xTool's website, and I get a little kickback. It really helps the channel, and I do appreciate that. One other thing I did mention at the beginning of the video about these jigs working for other laser cutters, I think most of it will probably work. I'm designing one for open frame right now where you don't have all these pencil knobs, I guess. Maybe I'll have it for just one pencil. My only fear about some of those open frame machines is the laser head is so close to the material. I'm worried it's going to hit these little knobs on the sides. So if you're doing the center stuff, I think it'd be just fine. All these machines, the laser head really isn't getting all that close to the material. It hovers pretty far above it, especially this F1. So that's not really a concern for the jigs and these xTool machines, but some of those open frame lasers, you have that protective shield that comes down, so you'd be fine in the center, but when you're kind of getting on the outskirts of that, you might run into some issues. So it's still designing on that open frame jig, but that hopefully will be up shortly. So yes, if you have any questions on this video, leave them in that comment section below. And as always, I'm Chad from Chad DIY, and we'll see you on the next one.